If you're after character from your next car, then there are only a couple of brands that could really deliver, and one of them is Alfa Romeo. It's a car company which is rooted in creating cars that make you feel good, both inside and out. How does it apply that to the SUV layout? Well, it does that with the Stelvio Quadrifoglio. It's a car with a big V6 engine up front, a very naughty exhaust out the back, and a very practical interior, which could make it an ideal performance family SUV. But what are the other factors you need to think about before considering the Stelvio QV? Well, let's dive in and see just what this car has to offer. The Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio is a car with loads of subtle indicators about the kind of performance it has to offer. I really love the green colour of this particular car, but you've also got the bonnet inlets and of course that famous clover leaf on the flanks. Around the back, the exhausts are an even greater sight into just how much performance this SUV has to offer. The interior of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio is a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, you've got these beautifully shaped buckets each, which are really supportive and look great too. And you've also got a nicely round steering wheel, which does away with too much flat bottom. And I think that's a good thing. You combine it with these fantastically large gear shift paddles to create a forward part of the cabin which feels special and engaging to the driver. But it's let down by some of the plastics and the materials in here. This whole section is just pretty nasty, to be honest with you, and the gear selector itself isn't the best, though it has been revised. I'd watch out on early Stelvio models, as there was this rather sharp bit of plastic at the back of it, and that's something that Alfa very quickly changed. But if you're considering buying a used one, I'd look out for that and just test behind the gear stick. Elsewhere, we've got a revised central screen, which, despite being new for the Stelvio, is quite a lot smaller than you'll find on rival products. And though it does have all the connectivity features that you could want, it's just a little bit confusing and not too intuitive to use. It just feels a bit fiddly, really. You can get it set up nicely enough, but I just think in terms of rival setups, it's not the best. The seating position is good though, and the all-round ergonomics are spot on. I just think it's let down in some key areas, mainly by the materials, and that's not something that you'd expect from a car costing over £70,000. There's plenty left to like in the rear seats of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. I've got a decent amount of space for my legs. There are handily some cutouts in the seats ahead of you, so there's some extra room for your knees, and then space for both my feet and my legs in general are both pretty good. Despite the raked roofline, I've got plenty of headroom too, but because of the black headlining and the black upholstery, it can feel, well, just a little bit dark and a little bit heavy in the back here. However, we have got some nice charging points. We've got USB and USB-C, and we've also got some handy vents, which I like because they look a bit like googly eyes looking out at you, but then that's just me being a 3-year-old. Overall, good in terms of practicality, and the build quality, which is a little bit lacking up front, feels less important back here. There are far fewer nasty plastics, and you just get lots of leather and lots of good materials. As well as the performance on offer, the Stelvio Quadrifoglio has a decent amount of practicality to throw up. It has a 525 litre boot, and as you can see, it's nice and low, and there's not too much of a lip either, so putting those heavier items in isn't going to prove too tricky. The only thing I would say is that there is a very large speaker here, and I reckon that's going to be quite susceptible to getting scratched if you're putting things like wood or other harder items in the back here, so I'd be tempted to make sure that's covered over before you load any of those bigger items. However, overall, really usable space, and it just adds another string to the bow of the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. Alfa really upped its game when it produced the Stelvio Quadrifoglio, and it transferred some of the excellent dynamics that you get from the Giulia saloon into this more high-riding and practical model. Up front, we've got a 2.9 litre bi-turbo V6 engine with 503 brake horsepower, and that's enough to get the Stelvio from 0 to 60 miles an hour around 3.5 seconds, which is very quick for a car of this size. But what really shines through on this SUV are its driving dynamics, far more than just its performance alone. The steering is really quick, and it's almost Ferrari-like in its eagerness to go off-centre, and that gives the whole car plenty of agility, and despite it being quite large, makes it feel agile and light. It's all accompanied by this lovely, raspy, quite classic sounding exhaust note. And again, what this whole car is about is character, and it's something that's so often missing from cars in this segment, is the type of driving experience that really makes you quite excited. It's an exciting car to drive, both in terms of when you're going slowly and when you're going more quickly. I love the fact that we've still got these fantastic, over-engineered, massive gear selector paddles behind the steering wheel, and it's something that I think a lot of other manufacturers should take note of, because it's the main point of interaction between the driver and the gearbox. So why wouldn't you want to celebrate that, particularly in a performance car? And it's something that Alfa has really brought to the fore. They're fantastic both in the way they look and their actual action, which is good. Having said that, the automatic gearbox left to its own devices shifts more than nicely enough. It's just having that ability to change yourself and making it a celebration of that process, which really reflects the whole kind of experience that you get from the Stelvio QV. Now, Alfa says that you should get, well, just over 20 mpg, but I think during daily driving, particularly if you're around town or if you're going more quickly, it's going to be a lot lower than that. I've got 18.4 up as my kind of average, and if I step on it, then you can get it down to single figures without really trying too hard. The good thing is there are a selection of driving modes to choose from, but what I really like is the fact that you can select the softer damper setting even in the more aggressive driver modes. It's a bit like Ferrari. Ferraris have always had a bumpy road button which you press and it sets the suspension into a system which seems almost perfectly designed for the UK, and it's the same here in the Stelvio. You press the bumpy road button, softens off the suspension, just makes it far more relaxing and far more comfortable when you're driving on our, well, quite broken up roads really. Again, it all just feels quite exuberant, and it's the kind of experience that can only be rivaled by something like a Porsche Macan in terms of dynamic ability. But whereas that car is more serious, this just feels, well, it feels like it's got its flip-flops on. It feels like it's ready for holiday and a bit of downtime. It's not all uptight and too angry or aggressive. Character is something that is so often missing from new cars, but it's a factor that comes by the boatload in the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. It's got a fantastic engine with a superb exhaust note, but in between it's a practical and easy to use SUV that could quite simply slot into family life on a day-to-day basis. If you can get over the, well, slightly abysmal running costs of this 2.9 litre V6 engine, then you can be rewarded with a car that feels special every time you get behind the wheel. And for me, that's one of its main reasons to recommend the Stelvio Quadrifoglio. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below and let us know in the comment section if this SUV would be the performance model that you would choose, or would you go for the Porsche Macan instead? And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors YouTube channel. And if you click that subscribe button, you'll be able to get a notification each time that we upload a new review.